Society loves to say that strong partners leave immediately after infidelity, but the reality, most people actually stay. And if you're choosing to work on your relationship, you are also likely battling that crushing shame of staying. Today, we are dismantling that stigma and exploring how to move from betrayal trauma to true empowerment without the judgment. And I'm joined today by Tammy Gustafson. Tammy's a licensed professional counselor, a coach, and host of the annual Betrayal Healing Conference. She is also the author of the upcoming book, Broken to Brave. And Tammy brings a unique perspective because she was a trauma therapist for years before she experienced her own shattering discovery of betrayal. So she knows the theory, but she also understands the pain and the uncertainty and all the feelings that go with that. So in this episode, Tammy and I go into the deep, nuanced layers of shame that partners face. And here are the three main points we're going to cover today. The shame of staying. We tackle the external pressure from society that says happy partners don't get cheated on and strong people leave. And we discuss how to navigate that deep shame of choosing to stay and work on the relationship when really the world is telling you to walk away. And then we're also going to talk about hindsight bias and the fool narrative. We explore the internal shame of why didn't I see this? And we break down why you aren't stupid. You aren't wrong. You were in a relationship agreement that was unilaterally broken by someone using gaslighting and deception. And then we're going to look at the all ship rise dynamic. And we discuss the critical shift in healing when the betrayed partner stops focusing on the addict and the betrayer or the secret keeper and starts focusing on their power, their identity, and their boundaries. And we explore how this differentiation often forces the betrayer or the secret keeper to finally face their own shame, creating the only real path for the relationship to survive. Let's jump into this episode. All right, everyone, welcome. I have an incredible guest today, Tammy Gustafson. And Tammy, I'm so glad you're going to come on to this episode because I have a really important question I want to talk to you about. But first, I want to just have you introduce yourself, and then we'll get into it.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here and have this conversation with you. I am Tammy Gustafson. I am a licensed professional counselor and also a coach and a speaker. And one of the big things I do is I host the Betrayal Healing Conference every year, where my specialty is really focused on betrayed partners, particularly women, and really helping them pick up the broken pieces of their heart after betrayal and kind of step into their power and their worth and their value. And so, yeah, excited to have this conversation.
Awesome. And I also want to mention that you have a new book coming out. Do you want to throw that out there right now? And we're going to talk a little bit about that too,
Sure.
because I think we'll tie this all together.
Yeah, so my book is coming out in January of 2026. It's called Broken to Brave, and it is specifically for betrayed partners and helping them walk through the journey no matter where they're at and really helping empower them and get their footing, helping them see kind of the path through to healing and that it is possible to get to the other side and have a beautiful life. So, yep, that's coming out. Super excited.
Awesome. So the question, I want to jump into this question right away. And, both of us work in the betrayal trauma field. And we work with couples and we work with betrayers and betrayed, and we see all of it. One of the biggest questions I get from the person who's been betrayed is, should I stay or should I leave? But bigger than that is if they choose to stay and work on a relationship, they have so much shame around that. So I wanted to jump in and talk to you about that piece of it specifically, because I think so many partners out there, that's a part they really struggle with. They're in this betrayed relationship and they just feel so much shame about choosing to work on it.
Yeah, it is. That's absolutely correct. I mean, there's so much shame, especially early on, that betrayed partners feel. And it's the shame of being associated with this, the shame that they're staying, the shame that, oh my gosh, like, what does this mean? And what does the world think of me? Because there's so many messages from society in general that really puts the shame onto the partner and says, like, well, obviously if you were having more sex with him, if you were more attentive to him, if you were doing all this, then he wouldn't have cheated because quote unquote happy men don't cheat. And so
Right.
there's this automatic, I hate this term, but victim blaming that happens where the blame automatically goes on to the one who was betrayed. And so for betrayed partners, they're already feeling that. There's already kind of shame that oftentimes comes in of them feeling like, well, maybe I didn't do this, or maybe I did, and taking that blame on themselves. But then one of the big messages that you get is this idea of, well, if my partner ever cheated on me, I would drop him instantly. I would leave him. Like, and
Right.
maybe before that happened, they even said that to themselves, if you ever cheat on me, I'm out. And then it happens. And then life is much more complicated. And then they love this person and they have a relationship and years or decades, maybe kids, all of this retirement wrapped up with this person. And all of a sudden, it is not so clear. It is not so obvious. And then they stay and they feel like they are getting shame and judgment from the outside. And a lot of times they often feel shame and judgment from the inside as well. So it's a very deep thing.
And you're talking, having all of that on top of all of the betrayal trauma, the gaslighting, the abuse from being lied to with deceptive sexuality. So not only do you have to deal with this shame piece, you have all that other trauma as well showing up.
Absolutely. And it is, and then with the betrayal, there's this shattering that happens, right? We use this word a lot, this shattering, like everything I thought I knew to be true now feels like a lie. Everything I thought was my foundation and stuff I could stand on now feels broken. And so it is incredibly disorienting for a betrayed partner. And then trying to think through all of this, and they're getting all of these messages. It's really, it's like this whole, the whole foundation of your life went out from underneath you and now you're buried under all of it and trying to navigate all this. It is very difficult.
And like you were saying, that cultural expectation that, if I'm cheated on, that's it. And we're told that message. I think that message is said everywhere. And then when the person decides to say, okay, maybe I want to work on this because of all of these other reasons, they're encountering that deep shame of their value. And then I was also going to ask you about the other piece too that I see is that how could I have not seen this, right? How could I have not? And the shame of being stupid. And I don't mean that they're stupid. They're being lied to and manipulated. But the feeling like that, it's so obvious now that I see it. How could I have ignored it or all of that stuff?
Absolutely. I'm so glad you brought that up because that is a huge one. And I think that is a very common word. I feel like a fool. I feel stupid. How could I not see it? How did I not know this was going on? Like, Dwayne, this is part of my story. And I was a therapist for many years ahead of time. And it's like, well, if
Right.
anybody should have seen it, like I feel like I should have seen it. And so this idea, man, I feel so foolish. Or if they stay and there's a relapse, then that even compounds it further, right? And
Right.
so that initial, especially in the early stages, that initial shame from all these different sides, and it's not only the shame, but really kind of what we're talking about with her relationship with herself is really a sense that she betrayed herself. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of self-hatred that can come in with that as well. So, yeah, there are a lot of different facets that kind of gang up on her and beat her up even further, or him, whoever is being betrayed, right?
Right. And it's so hard to walk through that because then, with shame, you end up wanting to hide and you end up not wanting to share it with anybody. And you can't share what's going on with your relationship, sometimes with your closest friends or family members, or just to speak it out loud, all of that shame starts to come in, and then you start to isolate and you feel so alone.
Yeah, and I think that is why one of the big antidotes to this for betrayed partners is connecting with other people who have gone through this.
Yeah.
Because I think as long as shame does it, right? It pulls you inside, it pulls you away from people. There's this fear of if people knew, then I would be rejected, right? And so there's this isolating and this pulling away piece that happens. And but once, man, I see it time and time again, the best thing that can happen is when one of my clients gets into a group. Now, when she's talking with me one on one, that's helpful, but even more so when she gets in a group of other
Yeah.
women who has gone through this and they are all saying the same thing. And she's like, well, I know you're not stupid. Like, I know you're not a fool, right? Of course you didn't see it. Like, he was hiding, he was lying. He was like, when they can see that in others, that's that first step of going, oh, maybe if that's true for you, maybe, just maybe that can be true for me too.
Yeah, absolutely. I see that as well. I mean, that's that group component that I think has to be in all elements of this work, whether you're the betrayed or the betrayer. You need that group component to be able to work through the shame on both sides of that. Um, so, what does a partner start to do when they start to realize this? They start to work on this. What's some of the first things that start to happen for a partner?
Well, you mean like how is that shift happening inside themselves?
Yeah,
Is that
like
what you mean?
even in your own story, as you went through this, and at first, you go through that this shame piece of it. There's all the other parts as well. We're just talking about that shame piece, but going through that and starting to realize, wait a minute, I I I'm okay. This isn't mine to hold.
Hmm. Yeah. First of all, I think it starts with, as best you can, a lot of self-compassion, right? And part of that starting to get this idea of like, okay, this was not my fault. And it's helpful when you have somebody else to think through that, but also just taking a step back and going, no matter what was going on in the relationship, there is an agreed upon relationship agreement, right? And so if there was something that he was not satisfied with or happy with, there are 100,000 things he could have done to stay within that relationship confined with that relationship agreement. When he crossed that line, you weren't there hoisting him over. You weren't there opening that gate. You weren't there saying, go for it. That was 100% on him. So when a betrayed partner can start to wrap her head around that of going, okay, was I perfect? No, I wasn't. But when he chose to step across that line of a relationship, that was on him. That I think is one of the foundational things that betrayed partners need to kind of step into of going, this was not my fault. And they might have to fight that in themselves and they might have to fight that outside, but standing firm on this was not my fault. I did not cause this to happen. It's also helpful for betrayed partners to know that statistically most stay.
Yeah,
We think that most go, or at least society thinks that most go and they go immediately. That's not the case. Like most actually stay. And so when you can start to wrap your head around that, you start to give yourself a little bit more room, right? And when you can start to maybe hearing some of these podcasts or whatnot and start to get into this world where people understand betrayal trauma and going, oh, it's not as simple as that. Like you mentioned before, there is also physiological, neurological things going on trauma wise that make a big difference. You pick up Michelle May's book, The Betrayal Bind, and you hear about how the attachment system and the threat response system are both activated at the same time and causing that war inside of like, ooh, I want him and I want him to comfort me, but I don't ever want to see him again because he's the biggest threat. And you start to understand that and you start to realize you're not crazy. You're not crazy, and you get to take time and space to start to work through this and think through this for yourself.
Yeah, and I like that you're saying that because when we're filled with that shame, we kind of go internal to ourselves, and this really starts to allow the partner to put responsibility where it lies in the betrayer, that it was their choice, right? That they chose to handle whatever difficulty it was in their life, in their relationship, this way. And I think that starts to create that healthy differentiation and really can be empowering.
Absolutely. I think for her, she has to start stepping into her power to heal, which means she has to have start that differentiation. She has to start setting boundaries of going like, hey, wait a second, this is not okay with me. Like, I don't feel safe in this, and maybe not physically, but emotionally I don't feel safe. And as she can start to get her footing, that helps also start to combat the shame. And I know you mentioned for my story, when life blew up, for us, I didn't want to tell anybody. I said I would often say my story can die 1,000 deaths. Like, I'm not going to tell anybody. I am not one of those women who wants to use my pain for good. Like, I just want
Forget it.
everybody to leave me alone and just let me try to duke this out with my husband and like figure out what's going on. And and honestly, we were in a very small town, which was very unhealthy, and so there was some safety and truth in that. But the
Right.
reality is that I was afraid of what people would think of me. I was afraid that they would view me as somehow defective based on what he did. And so it wasn't until I got some support who could speak into my life, and when I started to verbalize my own feelings and started to get validation, that's when that shame started to subside for me.
And it takes time, right? I think that's the other part with shame. I call shame a very sticky emotion. It likes to stick around. It doesn't, anxiety can kind of go up and down and pretty quickly, but shame kind of just hangs out and stays there. And it's a slow healing process. And I think that's so hard as well.
I agree. And I think shame really shuts down all the other emotions. It's so overwhelming,
Yeah.
right? But I think too that as we lean into that, and I think the other piece that is really helpful with shame is when we are able to reconnect with ourself and our identity. I think that's also a big for both men and women. Like, if we can step into who we are, if we can step into at the core of my being, I know that I am loving. I know that I am strong. I know that I care about people. I know that I did my best even though I failed. When we can start to get grounded in who we are and our identity, I think that also is a big shift, and it can start to fight and talk back to the shame.
Which is so empowering because it shifts your whole view. I mean, this impacts more than just this immediate situation, but your whole personhood.
Absolutely. And I think that is really the foundation, I think, for any healing, right? For any self-empowerment, but particularly when the shame says that you are not worthy, and at the core you are bad, right? And there is something that you did and you should pay for it. That's kind of what it feels like inside. And so when we can flip that around and get back in touch with that core, and sometimes we need help from the outside, sometimes we can dig deep, some people get help from their higher power on that, right? But when we can start to just get a flicker of that hope of like, no, I have worth and value. I have worth and value. And what I want and what I need matters. And I, at my core, am a good person. When we can start to dig into that and just start to fan that flame a little bit, I think that starts to make it forces shame to start to move.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it also, from the relationship perspective, dealing with people who betray, when a person who has been betrayed owns their power, owns the appropriate accountability to the person who's caused the harm, it actually helps the whole relationship because it helps the person who betrayed is probably in their own shame, shame spiral, right? No excuse for the behavior. I don't want to say that, but having them be held to account makes them face their shame as well.
Absolutely. And I have this picture that I use a lot, this idea of especially early on after betrayal blows up, there's kind of this unspoken balancing act that happens of whose emotions get center stage, right? And does the emotion and the focus go on him and his shame and his regret and all those emotions, right? Or does it stick with her and all the pain and the shattering and the damage that's happened? And part of that is her shame that she might feel as well. And the reality is that if she focuses on him, and if he pulls that focus onto himself, what I have seen, I'm curious to hear what you say, but the whole system shuts down. The whole healing system shuts down. Where for her, if she keeps that focus on herself and going, okay, I'm going to lean into, I'm feeling shame right now. I'm feeling blame. I'm going to lean into that and I'm going to do some work and I'm going to get focused around that. And he needs to heal, but he needs to focus on his own healing. And if she can stay in her own shoes and focus on that, and better yet, if he can focus on her as well, then all ships rise or have the potential to.
Oh, that has been totally my experience as well. When the partner becomes empowered and they step out of their own shame and say, "This is, you were the choice. You made the choices here, and here are my boundaries." Oftentimes, it pushes the betrayer to do their work, which is shame, which is that deep level of shame that they have to work on, which they will avoid at all costs until the costs almost are so great. I would love to say, yes, they jump in and they do the work and, they realize they made a mistake. But oftentimes it's not that. It's that they realize that if I don't do this work, I'm going to lose the very thing I value the most. And so I have to jump in and do my shame work. And I would agree with you. If that doesn't happen, the healing stalls there. And they may stay in that state for years, unfortunately,
Yeah.
until that piece takes place. And so I don't know if you have that kind of same experience that I do. But it's great to see it when they actually start to get that healing. And what I think the betrayer often doesn't get is when they heal themselves and they heal that shame and they show up for the relationship, they will heal themselves as well, right? When they choose that, what you said, her pain and his effort to help her heal, he will heal himself. And that's, I
Absolutely.
find, that is inspiring and um, I love to see, but there's some hurdles here.
Yeah, and I think everything, maybe not everything, but so much of what he needs to do to heal, if he focuses on her, he needs to learn how to feel her pain. He needs to
Yeah.
own it. If he's focusing on her, he's doing that, right? If he can heal within that relationship by focusing on repairing what he broke. And like you said, it will heal him. It has the potential of healing the relationship. And it's going to make things a lot easier for her to heal too. Like she can heal without him, but like you don't want to, if you want the relationship, that's not where you want her to have to go because then she's healing without you, right?
Yes.
And for her, she can heal, but man, it's a whole lot easier and it's a whole lot faster when he is showing up and when he is creating a safe place for her sadness and her anger and he is empathizing. Man, if he empathizes, that's going to fast track things so much for all of them.
And to be able to do that, he has to heal his own shame because if he's in shame, he can't be empathetic. So he's forced to do his work. And when that starts to happen, like you said, it really starts to manifest itself. And that's where I see healing happen as well. I'd love to ask you a question. I hope it's not too personal. I just want to know for you, what was that moment where you started to reflect back and go, wow, I am healing. I am getting better. I'm not here anymore. Is there kind of a moment you had that? I think for partners out there, they can feel so desperate that peace won't happen. But I want to also give them hope that is a possibility. And I wonder if you share your journey with that peace.
I don't, there's not a moment. There's not a moment. I think it's little moments along the way. And for me, I think there were times where I did hard things. Well, all of it's hard, right? But there are times in particular where I had hard conversations, both with my husband and with the community around us that was not helping my
Right.
healing and was hurtful in that process. Also, when I had conversations sticking up for myself with
Mm,
them, I walked away from a lot of those and went, oh, good for me. Like,
mm,
huh. Or when I would be vulnerable with my group and be like, guys, I am so struggling and this is what's going on. And they're like, Tammy, everything you're saying is making sense. You're on the right track. I was like, it's those moments little by little that add up. So I don't think it was ever one big moment, but it was a lot of steps along the way.
oh,
Does
thank
that
you.
answer your question?
Yes, that does answer my question, and I think that's helpful for people out there that this is something you build over time, which goes to the next piece here that I want to talk about. Your new book that you're putting out there that takes all of this wisdom, that takes all of this struggle that you've put out there, Broken to Brave, your courageous act of healing after intimate betrayal, which is coming out in January 2026. So
It is, yeah.
you've taken all this, your experience personally, your experience with all the people that you've helped, and you've poured it into this book. So I want to hear a little bit about that because I think that's really important too.
Yeah, thank you. So, yeah, I've been a counselor for gosh, about 18 years now and probably about 6 years before life blew up. And it's a combination of my background in trauma and then when life blew up, kind of my personal experience and then the shift of betrayal trauma. And really what this book came out of is I remember when life blew up and going, is it even possible to heal? Is it even
Yeah.
possible to get to the other side? And what about this whole marriage thing? Has any marriage ever made it to the other side after this? Is it even possible? And thankfully, I had an example of that so I could see that. But this idea of traveling this path and going, I don't know if I'm going forward or backwards. I don't know if what I'm doing is helping or hurting. Like, I just feel like I am falling through a black hole. But over time, so I made it through and our marriage made it through as well. But over time going, wow, there are actually really kind of distinct in my mind phases of this journey along the way. And there are some very key things that happen in each one of these phases. And if we focus on the wrong things at the wrong times, it's actually, we get stuck. And for the betrayed partners, there's a lot of ways to get stuck along this journey. It's very counterintuitive.
So counterintuitive.
Yeah. And so what I did is I just started to over time and as I'm seeing all this. And the beautiful thing, and I know you know this, Dwayne, but as counselors, we see patterns that you don't see when you're in it. But
Yeah,
there are
absolutely.
there are patterns and it makes what we do possible. And so what I saw is that there's this pattern of like phase one, and that's when life blows up, and that's when you're trying to get the truth. and you don't know what is going on, but all you need to focus on right there is getting the truth. And phase two starts when you either have the full truth or you know you're not going to get the full truth. And it continues to follow the relationship of going. Phase two is that messy middle where you don't know if he's going to get sober or not. You're trying to decide if you're going to stay or go. You don't know what's going to happen. You're getting boundaries, all of this. And then phase three kind of starts when it's like, okay, it's pretty clear the direction the relationship is going, whether that's it's healing, whether that's we're getting divorced, or whether that's, yeah, I'm staying, but he's not really fully doing the work and we're kind of in this roommate phase.
Right.
And then finally, what I find is that in phase four is a shift, and all women come back together in this phase. And that's where the focus shifts from the relationship or the partner. And it focuses on like, okay, I need to heal. I need to focus on me now. And so what I do throughout the book is it's like a long conversation over coffee where I just kind of, it's very conversational, and I just empower the heck out of her and help bring clarity and help her know where she's at in the process and what she needs to focus on and what's next, and just give her a lot of encouragement and strength along the way.
I love that, Tammy, because, when partners come in, it is so chaotic. It is so overwhelming. And to be able to say, look, there's a roadmap here that you kind of can follow along, and you're not crazy. This is kind of what expected. These are the questions that you have to ask yourself and explore, and I love that, because it's just, this is such a huge crisis. That's so overwhelming.
Yeah, and I just want to give betrayed partners a lot of permission, a lot of compassionate permission, permission to feel what you feel, permission to take the path that you need to take, permission to really look at, okay, this is my relationship. So what does, apart from, I can take in all this advice from all these wonderful experts, but at the end of the day, I am the only one living in this marriage. And so what is right for me? And so part of it too, there's no one fine line. There's no one right way to heal, right?
No.
But there is some guideposts of going like, hey, that's the direction you want to go. Keep going. You can do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think that's what makes this work so unique, is that there is no one right way to do this, but we have some pretty good, strong general ideas of where to go, and to be able to put that out there, I think is really amazing. Tammy, I really just want to thank you for coming on to this episode, and talking about this, and really talking about, that one piece of that shame that comes up for partners, because it's such a challenging piece to navigate. So I just want to thank you for coming on. Before you go, where can people find you? Where can they go if they want to know more about your book and you, and to get support?
Absolutely. Yeah, best place is my website, tammygustafson.com. And the book you can find on Amazon, and it's on pre-order now, and it'll be out January 27th.
Awesome, Tammy. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks so much for having me. Always a pleasure.
What a great conversation with Tammy. I really appreciate her coming on. Navigating the shame of staying is incredibly difficult, but as Tammy said, it is possible to move from broken to brave. If you felt seen by this episode, please take a second to subscribe to the channel. It really helps us get these conversations out to people who need them the most. And also, if you want to take this work a little bit deeper, you don't have to leave empty-handed here. I have a episode reference sheet that you can download. It's available to you in the description box below. It's designed to help you apply what we talked about today. So go grab that, be gentle with yourself, and I'll see you on the next episode.